Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Unity Day of Action lobbying training. We are lucky enough to have our good friend Mike Lazewski from the Drug Policy Alliance. He's going to be going over some of the do's and don'ts of how to be an effective lobbyist and how to have an effective meeting. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Frances Trousdale, the Last Prisoner Project. She's been doing a fantastic job getting everybody linked up with their elected officials and all the different materials that you'll be getting shortly after this training. And so with that, I want to kick it over to our good friend, Mike Lazewski. He's part of the Drug Policy Alliance, who has done fantastic work at the federal level. The Drug Policy Alliance has been really instrumental in pushing the MORE Act through the House. It is the only bill so far to actually make it to pass through the House. And so, Mike, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how everyone can make sure that they're having an effective meeting when they join us here on Thursday for their Unity Day of Action lobby meetings.
Thanks, Jason. Happy to be here. I'm Mike Lazewski. I'm a consultant with Drug Policy Alliance. I've been in federal marijuana advocacy now for a little over 10 years. Spent about 7 years with Americans for Safe Access, where I helped pass what was then known as the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, which is the amendment that has prevented Department of Justice from prosecuting state legal medical marijuana. Helped to work on the MORE Act, a lot of other bills, and there's really been a shift in federal marijuana policy, at least as how it's been viewed on Capitol Hill. In the old days, before we passed the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, people didn't want to meet with us. We were considered some sort of like third rail issue, and it was challenging to get a meeting, even just to get someone from a state that had a medical marijuana law. Nowadays, people want to meet with us. So we're not where we want to be with the law, but we've made progress in that Congress is paying a lot more attention to this issue. We're no longer a third rail issue. A lot of members of Congress are embracing marijuana reform, and as evidenced by the fact that we've passed descheduling legislation in the House twice now, and we have the majority leader in the Senate leading a comprehensive descheduling bill. We have a Republican version of a descheduling bill in the House. These are things that would not have happened 10 years ago. And the large reason for that is the grassroots work folks like you have been doing in your own states. And now it's time to connect that knowledge and effort you've been doing at the state level, at the local level, bring that knowledge to the federal level for this Day of Unity Lobby Day. I want to talk to you about a couple of things about how to have a successful meeting. If you've done lobbying before, and this doesn't sound like how you've done a meeting, don't worry. There's lots of ways of being able to do these meetings, but what I like to present is just sort of a foolproof way. If you've never done lobbying before, this is how you can have a successful meeting. And so when you get into your meeting, after you do your introductions, I think a nice flow for a meeting is to do a compelling fact, have a story that goes along with the fact, and then you do your ask for what you want the legislator to do. So when I had my first successful lobbying campaign at the local level here in DC, my supervisor at the ACLU said, what you want to do is you want to tell the person what you're going to do, what you are about to talk about. Then you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about, and then you're going to tell them what you just talked about. So some repetition in your meetings is fine. You want to start off the meeting by saying, hey, we're here to talk about your member supporting descheduling legislation. Then go into a compelling fact. Something like that could be like the arrest rates, the sentencing rates. You know, currently about 80% of federal marijuana sentences are for people of color, despite similar use rates. And then you want to go into some sort of story that's connected to both the fact and the bill you're talking about. And really, every individual story of the Last Prisoner Project, the folks who LPP has helped get out of prison, and the folks that are trying to get out of prison, those are great, compelling stories for these types of meetings. You may be able to share your own compelling story if you've been directly impacted or a loved one has. Those are all great material for a compelling story. So then you share your story, and then you follow up with that by saying, you know, the way that we can address this is through comprehensive descheduling legislation, a bill like the CAOA, or a bill like the MORE Act, a bill like the States Reform Act. would help solve this problem, I want your member to co-sponsor the bill. Please do so. It's as simple as that. You want to do some follow-up after the meeting because that's what really makes the meeting stick in that person's head and can double the effectiveness of what you just did. But it's as simple as that. And you know this stuff. You're a marijuana policy expert, whether you know it or not. If you're coming out to this event to DC, you feel passionately about this issue, you don't need to know every fact about marijuana reform. Just go with what your knowledge base is right now. And LPP has a lot of great materials specific to this day, so fall back on those as well. Just some tips on how to keep your stories effective. I think the ABCs of storytelling are a really easy way to think about it. You want to be accurate, brief, and compelling. And what I mean by that, accurate, never say something that's not a fact to a staffer. You will always want to be accurate. If you say something false, you lose credibility, whether they know it in the moment or they find out about it later. That's going to kill your credibility. The other side of that, though, is if you don't know something, you've already created an opportunity to do some follow-up with that person. So if they ask you, does this bill do such and such, and you're not sure, just say, I don't know, but I know who does. I'll get back to you in a couple of days on that. And it's as simple as that if they ask you something you don't know. You also want to be brief. You're going to be in these meetings. You may only have a 10 or 15-minute meeting. You may have a little bit more time, but you want to keep your story brief. You don't need to give the complete biography of the story. The high points, the points that make the most sense to the bill, that really point out the injustice of marijuana criminalization. That's what you want to stick with. So, keep it brief and keep it compelling. What I mean by that is, emotionally compelling, but also compelling to the story itself. So, it's something that's going to be that's going to speak to the heart. You want to put a face on this issue, so it's not just stats. You want to make it clear that this is impacting real lives, but you also want to connect it to the bill itself. So if you just stick with those things, you can make your story real brief, sweet, accurate. It's going to really resonate with that staffer. And then follow that up with the ask. I want the senator, the member, the House rep, I want your representative to support whatever the bill is. And again, LPP has that list of bills for you to refer to. Just some meeting tips, additional ones. Know your audience. If you're speaking to a Democrat, if you're speaking to a Republican, certain things may speak more to them. Other things may not be as, I guess, compelling. So just know who your audience is. Also, moderate Dems are, think a little bit differently than the progressive wing, and vice versa on the Republican side. Libertarians and moderate Republicans have different ways of approaching things. So try to speak to your audience if you can. Another thing, this is real basic stuff, but be on time. It's really important to be on time, but if you're not on time, what you really have to do is let them know you're going to be running late. Nobody cares if you're running late if you let them know. In fact, they may like it because it gives them a couple extra minutes to do something else that they probably been putting off for a long time, because staffers on Capitol Hill are very, very busy. So having some grace for their time, and also just understanding that, a staffer is a busy person. And so being respectful of that is helpful. You also want to try to show up early, because it takes a little longer to get through the halls than you think it would. It takes a little longer to get through security than you think it would. So if you have meetings stacked really close together, you may need to leave one meeting a little earlier, or at least let that other meeting know that you're running a little late. So those are just some things to keep in mind there. With your lobby teams, you want to try to figure out ahead of time who's going to have what role in the meeting. So you can have someone be a meeting facilitator. They do the introductions, they sort of do the time tracking, make sure that you're ready to go to your next meeting on time. Someone can be the person with the compelling information, whether that's the story or the compelling stats. And then you want to have someone taking notes. And people can do multiple roles. but you want to make sure ahead of time someone's at least doing each of those things. If you want to take pictures, it's best to do that out in the hallway because you can do that without having to ask anyone. But if you want to bring a camera into the meeting, just ask the staffer if it's okay to take a picture at some point. They'll probably tell you to do it at the end as like some sort of like brief photo op, but you never know. Some member may want to have live shots from the meeting itself, but always ask. That's the key thing there. Some final tips. Leave your leave behind materials for the end of the meeting. And the reason for this is if you hand them over early, they're going to stop paying attention to what you're saying and they're just going to start glancing at the material and they're going to be trying to do two things at once. And neither what you just handed them nor what you're saying is really going to stick with them. And in fact, if you don't give them anything, you're basically forcing them to take notes. And this is the real tip where you can find out like what's important to that member. If you've been talking for 2 or 3 minutes and they haven't jotted down anything, and then all of a sudden you say something, and they start writing that down, make a note of what they just took a note on, because that's really important to them. That's what spoke to their head. So keep an eye, whoever's doing the note taking, keep an eye on what they're taking notes on. And then here's one last tip. If you happen to run into a member of Congress in the hall, you see a senator, you see a House rep, do a much shorter version of that meeting formula I talked about earlier. You would say, you know, dear Senator so-and-so, or Senator so-and-so, I want to talk to you very briefly about marijuana reform and descheduling marijuana. Share a quick story, 30 seconds, about someone who may be incarcerated or, you know, perhaps your own personal story, and then connect it to, you know, the way that we could fix this problem is through a descheduling bill like the CAOA or like the States Reform Act or like the MORE Act, whatever the bill is that you want to talk about. Keep it very brief like that. You may only have a minute in those instances, but as you're walking the halls in Congress, you might see Bernie Sanders in the elevator. You might see Nancy Mace coming out of an office, and you might get a quick moment to say something to them. So be prepared for those moments, because if you see a member, you might think, oh, what do I say to them right now? Oh, shoot. Or you might just do a brain dump on them and it might not be particularly effective. So a little preparation goes a long way. I know that's a lot of information. Thankfully, this is being recorded, so you can back it up and check out what I said previously if I spoke too fast. You know, LPP's got some great materials for this lobby day. And lobbying's a lot easier than it sounds. If you've done it before, once you've had that first meeting, you'll realize like, oh, that's it. I'm just talking about this thing I care a lot about. It'll feel real empowering. And also don't get down if the staffer isn't super into it. You never know what they were doing earlier or what they have after. You always want to be courteous, give them the benefit of the doubt, avoid being argumentative. And again, follow-up is great. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason.
Right on. Thank you, Mike. That was incredible. Really appreciate that. Yeah, one thing I'll just add is that, you know, our representatives work for us, right? And so you're there to tell folks that work for you what you want. And you don't have to be ashamed of that. There's not a whole lot of justification necessary, but you do want to be persuasive, right? And so you do want to have a big smile. You know, this is a relationship you're building with somebody that you want to have a conversation with for the very long term, right? And so you want to make sure that when you leave that meeting, they feel good about the interaction, you feel good about the interaction, but you don't need any particular expertise, right? In order to be credible, these are your representatives and they're there to do what you want for them, right? And as Mike mentioned, we will have a number of documents that'll be available for folks, and everyone will have packets full of this information that you can leave behind for folks. And so if there are any questions that come up that aren't able to be answered right away, you can always say, I would be happy to follow up with you after this meeting with more information on that. So just like you're watching and see what they're taking notes on, make sure you take notes if there's anything that comes up that we didn't cover. But hopefully, you know, the vast majority of the conversation will be reflected in the materials that we already produced. But with that, I think we can do a quick experiment here, and I'm going to test my own lobbying abilities to see if I can actually do a quick practice round, because I want to make sure we show folks, not just tell them how to do this. And so I'm going to be playing the Last Prisoner Project 420 Day of Action lobbyer, and Mike is going to be playing a staffer for my representative, Senator Blumenthal, who's here in Connecticut. Cool. So ready, Mike? Ready to get lobbied?
Yeah, I'll put my moderate Dem hat on.
Yes. All right. So knock, 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 get in the door. Hello, Mr. Lazuski. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. I really appreciate you actually addressing this issue with us.
Yeah, thanks for coming from Connecticut. Always great to have people from the state here. Tell us what you want to talk about.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So again, I'm from Connecticut. I'm a resident of New London, Connecticut. I'm a big supporter of the senators. I've voted for him multiple times now. And, it's definitely been very encouraging to see him be so active and available to the community. I'm someone that's been organizing for a very long time. I was the president of the Minority Cannabis Business Association for a number of years, and also the president of the Puerto Rican Agenda here in Connecticut for a number of years, where I got to work with the senator very closely, helping the families that came back from Hurricane Maria who had to find housing. So thank you so much for that work. We really appreciate it. But today I'm here to talk about cannabis policy, because I am somebody that was arrested for cannabis policy in high school back in the year 2000, thrown out of school, and had my life derailed from a simple possession charge, right? And so it is still impacting folks today. But today we have the opportunity to really end this, not just at the Connecticut level, which it is already legal, but at the federal level. There are a number of full descheduling bills that we would really like your support on. Specifically, the Cannabis Administration Opportunities Act is in the Senate. It's being introduced by Senator Chuck Schumer and a number of other senators, including Senators Booker and a number of other folks that I think you would, align with quite well. And so the ask today is to be one of the original sponsors on that when it does get reintroduced, because we do have still 3,000 cannabis prisoners in federal prison, over 40,000 cannabis prisoners in state prisons, and half of the country still has not legalized cannabis yet. And so we really do need action at the federal level. You're somebody that is very influential within the Democratic caucus. And so we're wondering if, you have a position already on this, or what we can do to make sure that you are a leader on this issue.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. The senator really feels strongly that states should be leading the charge on marijuana reform. He supports what the voters have decided in Connecticut. And is a bill like this really even necessary if the states are already doing this work? Or is there something, does the federal government really have to do all this? Is there something else the federal government could do instead?
Well, the CAOA specifically does allow the states to continue the process of figuring out what exactly works for them, but it would remove a number of barriers to that conversation, right? We do have to have full legalization at the federal level for the states to be able to do what they want, right? Connecticut would like to do a lot of things, I think, to support its industry, to support criminal justice, but as long as cannabis remains on the Controlled Substances Act, there's all kinds of barriers for the states to be able to enact the policies they want. So really, if you do support states' rights, the way to get there is by fully decriminalizing cannabis. And the only way to fully do that is by descheduling it. And I think that's where the CAOA really is the vehicle for us to talk about how we do this comprehensively. The other piece of the states' rights issues is that we are working with the conservative folks to figure out exactly how to make that happen, right? We have folks like law enforcement agencies and veterans that are working with us that are really figuring out exactly what that would look like in places across the South, right? And so I think while we're lucky enough to be from Connecticut, that's a very progressive state, we do need to also think about opening up the doors for the states in the South and making it a little bit easier for them to change their ways as well. The only way we're going to do that is with full, bold, real, 100% decriminalizing cannabis.
Okay. One thing we've been hearing a little bit with marijuana issues is that it could help veterans. We've also heard it could hurt veterans. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about that. If we legalize marijuana, isn't that gonna like hurt veterans with their access to their VA benefits?
So we are very proud that this particular day of action is a very bipartisan day of action, and we have the Veterans Cannabis Coalition as one of the members of our coalition, and they're actually on the field right now meeting with Congress folks all across the aisle and all across Capitol Hill. So I would like to introduce you at some point to Eric Gopal of the Veterans Alliance, because he can
Great.
speak to that much more specifically. That being said, again, here we have had countless veterans lose access to medical care because of less than honorable discharges related to cannabis. And so we cannot actually address those specific issues and make sure that our veterans get the help and the health care that they need while we continue to criminalize cannabis, right? Like veterans are able to access it at a state level, but then within the VA could get penalized for using state legal cannabis. And the only way we're going to be able to figure out how to, address that tension is with full descheduling, right? And so I think as we move forward with this, your support specifically as somebody that is so strong on Veterans Affairs and could create those conversations with the VA to figure out exactly how we do this would be vital to making sure that this actually does include all of the communities that need it. And veterans are one of those communities. So I think you could be pivotal as a leader on that particular conversation. If you were choose to hop on and become a co-sponsor, you would make sure that you had all the veteran support you needed to really make sure we address that fully.
That's really good to know. The senator is a huge supporter of veterans. That's an issue that that's really important to him. So if this bill helps veterans, I can take that back to the senator and let them know. It's great to hear that this is being led by Leader Schumer. That gives it anything the leader supports, we're going to take seriously. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else that I should know before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think the only other thing is that this is definitely the time for bold action. 70% of the public supports full legalization of cannabis. It is the most popular electoral issue in American politics today. And I think it's one of those things that even the administration, right? Vice President Harris has said we should move forward on full legalization. So there really isn't a whole lot of risk here. We just need some real political courage from our leaders to really get this done and move it forward. And I do think it is not just the right thing to do, it's the strategic thing to do. And it is an idea who is long past time has come. And so please, consider this and let us know specifically, like, what would you need to see in a bill in order to get your support? I think that's really the conversation we want to have so we can work with the different communities to make sure that your personal concerns and the concerns of the senators are addressed. And this is the time to do it, right? We have amazing people from all different backgrounds, business owners, progressives, conservatives, that are able to address any political concern or policy need that is there. So looking forward to following up with you, figuring out exactly how we can get you on board and connecting you with our amazing veterans who are part of our community. So thank you so much for the time. And yeah, definitely have a beautiful day. We'll talk to you soon.
Great. Yeah. Thank you again for coming down from the state. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you. And scene. So what do you think? How did I do, Mike?
Great. You were able to answer questions. With when I raised veterans, that may be something that's outside like your level of expertise, but the expert. You're able to connect the office to the expert. You made that clear. They're going to enjoy that. That connect, like having another resource, especially if it's someone who is a veteran. That's gonna, like, for Blumenthal. He's big on veterans issues. If you walk into the office, like, he always has veterans working the front desk, that sort of thing. A lot of these senators like wear like an avatar like that on their sleeve. So that, usually when you read the bios on their website, that'll give you the clue as to like what's important for them. So that's another hint. But yeah, the flow of the meeting was good. You started the meeting off with like what you wanted to talk about. You shared the story, and then you went into the ask. You responded to the questions well. If I wasn't being, I thought I was being pretty obvious about this, but there were like 2 or 3 times I was like jotting down things or tried to make it look like I was. That's the type of thing like I think a Blumenthal staffer would have responded to. So like, saying how this helps veterans, or, that there's this bill that like Leader Schumer is putting out. Those are probably the types of things they're going to be responding to. So, keep an eye out for when the arm goes up and their head goes down. That's a moment to take a note of in the meeting. Yeah, everything I think you did there went well. You kept it respectful. I didn't do the fake hostility that we sometimes do in these trainings. But yeah, if here's, kill them with kindness is the thing. If a staffer is a little confrontational, again, you don't get anywhere by getting argumentative with a staffer. You just might make a note like, oh, this office is pretty, cantankerous and it's a problem. You got some intel for the movement, like, and just being able to, keep the smile on for 5 or 10 minutes till you get out of the meeting is good in those situations. But most of the time, like, it's going to be either a positive tone or some disinterest. And I wouldn't take the disinterest as that they're not paying attention to the issue or they're not paying attention to you. It's that they're generally, particularly on the House side, multitasking on about 7 or 8 different issues at once. So again, having some grace for the disposition of the staffer goes a long way.
Yeah, normally even the folks that are really against are just sort of flat. Like we haven't had as many folks that are like very aggressively against, right? Because they don't want to have that interaction either. And I think for me, I've always been able to kind of just like respond with a smile, like, oh, I love spicy questions, right? And
Yeah.
so just kind of play with it, right? Like it's going to be a fun conversation. And for those difficult ones, it's true, as Mike says, that we want to note that so that we can send some of our stronger advocates to see exactly what to do there. But it's also good to just know who's not going to be with us. And so we are not wasting time on those folks. And so part of hitting every single person is to get that feedback of who is worth investing time in, who's a maybe, who's already super yes, and we don't need to really spend a whole lot of time on them, right? And so, it's definitely going to be dynamic. There may be some folks that are actually already supportive or already signed on to the MORE Act. So those conversations might be more thank you, right? And like asking them, who else should we really be talking to? Who else in your caucus or your committees, right? As the folks that you think we could swing, and really use those allies as intel, right? Of like how we should follow up in the next steps. And that's also really important information for us. There's also could be lots of new Congress folks, right? That like this is their first year in Congress and they don't know where they stand, or they are trying to figure it out. And that's also another really important thing to know, right? If folks are kind of fresh and they just really do need a lot more information, or other folks, it's like, I need this in the bill or I'm not on it, right? And that's also information we need to collect too. So yeah, I think that was good. Like I want to make sure folks know that it doesn't have to be super long, like super complicated. Really is about your personal story, but I think that's a good intro, and folks will be able to get in there and be able to see what it's like and what it feels like. Francis, I don't know if you have any final thoughts or questions or anything in that interaction that you felt went well, or something you want to debrief a little.
I thought that went really well. I guess one more logistical question. If I finish a meeting and I have notes that I want to report back to, what is the best way to get notes to the bigger group so people know who we have the support of, who we don't, what to focus on, and what points of conviction we need, etc.
Yes, great question, because we will have a form. So it'll be a Google form that you'll fill out, that after the meeting, you can kind of put in exactly who you met with, how it went, what were their questions, and it'll all populate into a big form for us. And then we'll be able to take that information from there. So there'll be a link that included in the email when you got this training, but will also be sent out a few other times. And so you'll be using that Google form. If you do have just like written notes, right, because you wrote it by hand and you want to take a picture of that page and send it to us, that'll also be helpful. But the main thing, there will be a specific Google form for that information.
Okay, that's helpful. And would you recommend that I follow up with representatives after the meeting?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, within 24 hours, send a thank you email. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Just, thank you for taking the time. Just want to, remind you of the ask to support the bill. If you've heard anything from Senator so-and-so, let's talk. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you have. Would love to be a resource. And then, every 3 to 6 months or so, you can just periodically check in with the staffer, and just be like, hey, remember that meeting we had? I'm, curious if there's any progress, or, a story comes up. You want to you can send it their way and just be like, hey, remember that meeting we had? Here's a local story about how, it's impacting people in Connecticut or whatever. And, another thing is, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like one meeting is not going to be it's like the movement does not rest on any one of these meetings. As Justin Streckel from Normal used to say, there's no meeting to rule them all. You want to have a good meeting, but it's not going to be the end of the world if it doesn't go great. And, everyone, it's a spectrum from hard no to, lead sponsor fighting for the movement. Yes. And you just want to drag someone just a little bit closer to, from when they were, you started that meeting to that point where we want to get them. If you can get a hard no to someone who's still a no, but like they're not going to stand in our way, that's progress. That helps us. So, we're just trying to move the needle a little bit with each of these meetings. But don't feel like the movement, the weight of the movement is on your shoulders for any of these meetings. It's not. These meetings are important. Each of them together in aggregate is how we get this done. but one meeting will not be the end of the movement if it doesn't go well. So don't feel any pressure. You're going to do great. You all are experts on this already. And once you have that first meeting under your belt, you're going to realize just how easy and empowering this can be.
Yeah, and just really before I forget, also on the pointing back to the folks that are experts in different parts of this, right? Like you may get asked lots of specific questions, but looking at the image of all the coalition organizations, please do check out the different orgs so you can know their background. We have folks that are very specifically tied to, say, racial justice issues, or making sure people of color have business opportunities, or, you know, retroactive relief and helping folks get out of prison. And there's somebody in this coalition that is the perfect messenger for that congressperson. So if you're wondering sort of like how I can follow up, one of the best things you can do is say, thank you so much for the meeting. Here's the contact info for that person I was talking to you about. Let's set up a follow-up meeting with them to talk about that issue specifically, and just leave it at that, right? The other thing is you can always meet with your folks in your home district, right? And so there's offices in DC, and there's also offices in wherever you live that you can follow up and have a home district meeting. It can be a little bit more talking about the local impacts of the war on drugs on your community. But that's also a really great way to follow up, is just meeting with the local staff. So when things come up in your neighborhood, right, you have somebody in that office that can help you on cannabis issues and generally, right? Like you never know when you're going to be wanting to have a congressperson help you out with an issue about housing or other issues that are going on in your state. So definitely be sure to follow up, thank them, try to meet with other folks of the staff, and I think you'll be able to develop a very powerful relationship with your representative and be able to utilize that for all kinds of things in life. So with that, I'm going to thank Mike. Thank you so much for your time, for helping us make sure everybody knows what they're doing. Francis for putting together all the amazing documents and getting everybody together and scheduled. And thank you, of course, to the coalition here for making the Unity Day of Action possible. Looking forward to seeing everybody in DC. Please do contact us if you have any additional questions. And with that, go get them, fam. We're going to get it done. Thanks, everybody.